Good morning. Imagine looking out at the ocean horizon on a clear Tuesday morning. You expect to see open water, right? Maybe a fishing boat or two.
But instead, you see a wall of steel.
Right. 200 commercial cargo ships just lined up end to end, and they look like everyday freighters, the kind carrying electronics or grain.
But they are actually the vanguard of a highly sophisticated, coordinated military blockade.
Exactly. Good morning and welcome. You are tuning into a critical briefing on the shifting currents of global security. This deep dive is brought to you by our sponsor, ProWave AI.
And this broadcast is generated by Stylo News, the premier AI-powered news application.
You are listening to the Stylo News Intel update. This is the Asia Situation Report dated 24 August 2026.
And, it's essential to understand the tools at your disposal today. We are utilizing the Stylo News application, which is actually the consumer-facing version of Stylo Intel Ops.
Right, which is designed for enterprise operations.
Exactly. It's a heavy-duty software architecture designed for government agencies, military commands, and multinational businesses.
So it means you, the listener, have unique, direct access to a tool designed to support the highest level global decision makers. You're getting the exact same caliber of intelligence synthesis that they receive daily.
Which is pretty incredible.
It really is. So our mission today is to analyze the strategic situation, the conflict zones, and the flashpoints across the international landscape over the past 2 weeks.
We have a massive stack of intelligence estimates, open source data, and Stylo News summaries right in front of us.
And we're going to synthesize exactly what you need to know, moving geographically. We'll start with the maritime tensions of East Asia, look at the Korean Peninsula, pivot to South Asia, and then conclude with the insurgencies in Southeast Asia.
And along the way, we will identify the key decision makers, lay out the most likely courses of action or COAs, and analyze the prevailing sentiment on social media platforms like X.
And as always, we maintain strict neutrality on all geopolitical and domestic political issues. We're just presenting the facts and varying perspectives exactly as they appear in the intelligence.
No bias, just the briefing.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the largest geopolitical heavyweight in the room, which is China. Because their actions ripple across all the other theaters.
They really do.
Over the past 2 weeks, intelligence shows an intense pressure campaign around Taiwan. China recently used a typhoon as a pretext to impose administrative maritime traffic controls in the Taiwan Strait.
And then there's that image you mentioned at the top of the broadcast.
Yeah, the wall of steel. Open source intelligence reported an unprecedented 200 Chinese commercial vessels operating east of Taiwan.
That fleet is the physical manifestation of what strategists call civil-military fusion. Chinese defense researchers are actively pushing to integrate civilian cargo ships for wartime use.
Like actually weaponizing civilian infrastructure.
Exactly. We are talking about retrofitting massive roll-on, roll-off commercial ferries, the kind you usually drive your car onto for a vacation.
Right.
They're modifying them so they can deploy amphibious assault vehicles directly into the water. So, by using a typhoon as a pretext for traffic controls, Beijing is testing its administrative muscle.
Just normalizing the idea that they control who comes and goes around the island.
Yes, normalizing that control.
And Taiwan is clearly watching this happen. They just completed their Hanquang 42 readiness drills, and the intelligence highlights a major shift in how they are training right now.
They weren't just practicing how to repel a traditional beach landing anymore.
No, not at all. They focused heavily on anti-blockade operations, civil defense, and decapitation strike scenarios.
Which basically means preparing for attempts to take out their top political leadership.
Exactly. They even tested live-fire first-person view, or FPV, drones. For anyone unfamiliar, FPV drones are those small, highly maneuverable racing drones where the pilot wears VR goggles.
Right, and militaries are now strapping explosives to them.
Yeah, to take out armored vehicles for just a fraction of the cost of a traditional missile. Taipei is preparing for an asymmetric threat, heavily emphasizing these cheaper, highly lethal technologies.
And this is all alongside a proposed record $35 billion defense budget for 2027.
Oh, wow. $35 billion.
Yeah, and that budget, plus the shift to asymmetric warfare, it tells a very clear story. When we say asymmetric, we just mean a weaker force using unconventional tactics to exploit the vulnerabilities of a stronger force.
Because Taiwan knows it cannot match China's ship for ship, or jet for jet.
Right. FPV drones and anti-blockade drills show they're preparing to make any hostile action unbearably costly.
So they aren't gearing up to fight off a massive D-Day-style amphibious invasion at all.
Not really, no.
They're acting like they're fighting a boa constrictor, just slowly tightening the coils with these civilian ships and administrative rules so Taiwan suffocates before a single shot is even fired.
That boa constrictor analogy is incredibly apt. Beijing appears to be focused on maintaining escalation dominance.
Escalation dominance meaning holding the trump card.
Oh, yes. Making sure that if the other guy wants to raise the stakes and escalate a conflict, it is going to cost him a lot more than it costs you. An amphibious invasion is incredibly high risk and costly.
But by normalizing this gray zone pressure,
Exactly. Using commercial vessels, Coast Guard ships, and maritime law enforcement, they squeeze the space Taiwan has to operate in. They probe for opportunities without crossing the threshold into open, conventional war.
if China is perfecting this gray zone strategy around Taiwan, they seem to be applying a very similar playbook further south in the South China Sea. The intelligence briefings call it a robotic fortress strategy.
It is a layered control model designed to physically deny access to vast stretches of the ocean.
We are seeing continued militarization of places like Antelope Reef, right?
Yeah, satellite imagery indicates major runway and harbor developments there. But it is not just concrete. They're interlocking automated maritime sensors, drone swarms, heavily armed Coast Guard cutters, and a maritime militia of fishing boats.
So if a foreign vessel enters the area,
It's tracked by sensors, swarmed by militia boats that physically block its path, and overseen by larger Coast Guard ships.
which is causing direct physical friction. I mean, there was a recent incident near Second Thomas Shoal where Chinese Coast Guard actions reportedly injured Philippine personnel.
And this is all happening under the shadow of a growing regional perception of U.S. vulnerability.
The reports highlight significant anxiety over U.S. force strain in the region. That was really punctuated by a reported 4-day power loss aboard the USS Benfold while it was operating in the South China Sea.
A 4-day power loss for an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in a contested zone is a massive perceived vulnerability.
Definitely.
What's fascinating here is how China is normalizing control without firing a single shot in anger. They are maximizing their strategic leverage, building out forward military nodes, and testing the response times and political will of the U.S. and its allies.
And social media sentiment on X is overwhelmingly anxious about this. The discourse there is highly negative regarding China's expansion, with just intense concerns about unchecked dominance.
But we have to look at the decision makers in Beijing to understand their COA, their course of action.
Right, maintaining our neutrality here.
Exactly. From the perspective of President Xi Jinping and Chinese state media, their actions are viewed entirely defensively. They see Taiwan's record defense budget as a provocative, warmongering move.
And Beijing firmly defends its territorial claims in the South China Sea. Right?
Yes, they completely deny any illegal encroachment and frame their maritime law enforcement as standard sovereignty protection. They view the U.S. presence in the region as the actual destabilizing factor.
So both sides genuinely view their own actions as defensive and the other side's actions as escalatory.
That fundamental disconnect is what makes the theater so volatile. And, if China is trying to win without fighting by using commercial ships and automated sensors, North Korea is taking the exact opposite approach.
They really are. They are actively exporting their military power to a hot war.
And treating the battlefield as a live-fire laboratory.
The intelligence here is startling. North Korea has transitioned from merely supplying arms to providing direct combat support. On August 11th, Ukrainian intelligence reported a strike on the Zaporizhia metallurgical plant using North Korean ballistic missiles.
Furthermore, there is intelligence indicating the deployment of a 90-man North Korean missile unit to Russia's Voronezh region.
Wait, and aren't there rumors of even more troops?
Yeah, unverified open-source rumors suggest up to 50,000 troops could eventually be involved. Getting real telemetry data on how their missiles perform against Western air defense systems in Ukraine is an absolute goldmine for North Korean engineers.
It alters the strategic calculus for everyone. And it is happening concurrently with a major U.S. policy shift.
We must note a recent announcement by U.S. President Donald Trump. Via social media, President Trump announced a scaling back of joint U.S.-South Korea military drills.
Right. He cited a, quote, very good relationship with Kim Jong-un, stating that North Korea has been respectful.
And he framed the joint drills as unnecessarily hostile and a major cost concern. For decades, those joint drills have been the bedrock of conventional deterrence on the peninsula.
Wait, I need to stop you there. I'm confused. If the U.S. is pulling back on military drills as a peace offering or a cost-saving measure with Kim Jong-un, why is North Korea reacting by shooting more missiles and crossing the DMZ? Shouldn't de-escalation breed de-escalation?
In a traditional diplomatic model, perhaps, but North Korea practices extortion diplomacy. The South Korean government in Seoul is experiencing deep anxiety over this because they view the reduction in drills as a weakening of deterrence.
And Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, publicly dismissed the drill reductions, didn't she?
She did, and maintained highly aggressive rhetoric. By stepping up tactical provocations like the recent incident where North Korean soldiers crossed the military demarcation line in the DMZ, prompting South Korean warning shots.
Or the recent ballistic missile tests from the Wonsan area.
Exactly. Pyongyang is trying to exploit any friction in the U.S.-South Korea alliance.
They want to see how far they can push before the U.S. or South Korea pushes back. If you look at the sentiment on X, there is profound alarm over nuclear proliferation in Asia, and a lot of skepticism toward the U.S. policy shift.
Users are highly concerned that scaling back pressure is just emboldening Pyongyang.
But despite the provocations, what's the actual most likely course of action?
The intelligence assesses that a full-scale invasion of South Korea remains unlikely in the near term. North Korea benefits far more from its current strategy. The most likely course of action is continued tactical provocations.
So expect more missile tests, aggressive cyber operations.
GPS jamming that disrupts civilian aviation and maritime traffic, and border probing. They're utilizing the diplomatic and financial cover they are getting from Russia to refine their weapons without risking a regime-ending war with the South.
Wow. Well, if East Asia is about interstate posturing, South Asia is an entirely different landscape.
It really is.
Here, we move away from the threat of massive interstate war and look at a region where internal instability, proxy networks, and border frictions are boiling over simultaneously. Pakistan right now is an absolute pressure cooker.
The internal strain on the Pakistani state is immense, geographically and economically.
The intelligence highlights violent anti-army protests erupting in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, specifically in areas like Rawalakot and Kotli.
And at the exact same time, in the northwest Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, they are dealing with deadly attacks by the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP.
And in the southwest, there is ongoing separatist violence from the Balochistan Liberation Army, the BLA.
It's a multi-front crisis. And right next door, India is dealing with its own severe security challenges. Indian security forces recently conducted a massive counter-terror operation resulting in over 200 arrests across 14 different states.
They dismantled what is alleged to be an ISI-linked hybrid terror network operated by an individual named Shahzad Bhathi, recovering IEDs and grenades in the process.
And when the intelligence says ISI-linked, they are referring to Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Agency.
Right, and a hybrid terror network is a crucial concept here, isn't it?
Definitely. State intelligence agencies will sometimes fund or supply local criminal syndicates or radicalized individuals to do the operational dirty work. This gives the state plausible deniability.
They can orchestrate an attack in a rival country, but when the perpetrators are caught, they just look like local criminals or independent terrorists.
Plausible deniability while keeping your rival constantly bleeding.
And on top of these internal and proxy threats, you still have the conventional military standoff high in the Himalayas between India and China.
The border dispute is still very active.
Yeah, a recent fact-finding report from India's ruling BJP regional bloc claimed that Indian forces actually abandoned the Shira 5 patrol point in the Taksing area of Arunachal Pradesh, following a confrontation with China's PLA back in 2023.
Though the Chinese government vehemently denies this allegation.
Right. They state that the border is completely stable and maintain their long-standing claim that Arunachal Pradesh is actually part of South Tibet. But the political outrage in New Delhi over the alleged loss of territory is very real.
You have 3 nuclear-armed nations, India, Pakistan, and China, dealing with severe internal fracturing or domestic political pressure, while their militaries stand face-to-face on contested high-altitude borders.
So what does this all mean? Does the fact that Pakistan and India are dealing with so much internal chaos act as a deterrent to war? Like, are they just too distracted putting out fires at home to start a major war with each other?
Or does it actually increase the likelihood of a conflict?
Exactly, like a diversionary border skirmish to rally the public around the flag.
Well, the intelligence assessment suggests the latter is the primary risk. An immediate, deliberate four-nation war involving India, Pakistan, China, and Afghanistan is highly unlikely.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring.
But the real danger is that internal instability degrades state control. When a government is distracted by protests or economic collapse, proxy groups and local commanders operate more freely.
Meaning a major terrorist attack facilitated by a hybrid network or a miscalculated patrol clash in the Himalayas by a local commander scene.
Could easily trigger a rapid escalation because the political environments in these capitals are so tense, no leader can afford to look weak at home.
And if you're watching global markets or supply chains, this next point is critical. Mark your calendars for the upcoming BRICS Summit in India, scheduled for September 12th and 13th, 2026.
President Xi Jinping and Indian leaders are expected to be in the same room. That direct, face-to-face engagement could be pivotal for either cooling off the border dispute or cementing the gridlock.
Which brings us to our final theater, Southeast Asia.
This region shares thematic similarities with South Asia, namely severe internal fractures, but it has the added massive complication of being the physical arena for the U.S.-China maritime rivalry we discussed at the top of the briefing.
Yeah, when we look at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, the intelligence is very clear. A conventional war between member states is highly unlikely.
The primary threats destroying communities right now are entirely internal.
You have Myanmar's devastating civil war, with the Iraqi army fighting the military junta, which is driving a massive humanitarian crisis in Rakhine State.
You also have persistent separatist violence. There was a recent ambush on a chief minister in Mindanao in the Philippines.
And deadly firefights between security forces and rebels in Papua, Indonesia.
And this internal violence is tragically compounded by ASEAN's strict diplomatic policy of non-interference.
Right. As a bloc, they fundamentally refuse to intervene in the domestic affairs of their member states.
Which creates a huge blind spot.
It's like living in a neighborhood association that absolutely refuses to call the fire department while one of the houses on the street is burning down to the foundation. They prioritize the bylaws and group cohesion, but the fire is still spreading and the smoke is choking the whole street.
The spillover from these internal issues inevitably intersects with external power competition. Refugees flee across borders, rebel groups seek black market arms, and internal weakness invites external meddling.
Which brings our narrative full circle back to the South China Sea.
Because it is not just China making moves in this fragile environment. The intelligence reports a significant U.S.-Philippine military buildup happening on Balabac Island.
And Balabac is a crucial piece of geography because it overlooks key transit straits in the South China Sea. But that buildup is actually causing a lot of alarm right next door in Malaysia, specifically in the state of Sabah.
They worry that militarizing their immediate neighborhood essentially paints a giant target on their backs if a conflict breaks out.
Which is a valid concern.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, well, the real danger in Southeast Asia isn't that ASEAN states are going to declare war on each other.
Right.
The danger is that this complex web of internal fragility, insurgencies, and overlapping territorial claims creates the perfect tinderbox.
A gray zone incident in the maritime domain, say, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel colliding with a Philippine supply ship, or a U.S. drone being targeted.
Exactly. It could spiral completely out of control in this environment, ultimately dragging external powers into a kinetic conflict.
So, to summarize the intelligence landscape over the past 2 weeks, here are the most likely events you should watch for in the coming days. First, anticipate localized maritime collisions or aggressive blocking maneuvers in the South China Sea as gray zone coercion continues.
Second, watch for continued North Korean missile tests. Pyongyang will almost certainly leverage their new combat telemetry data from Russia to rapidly refine their systems.
And third, expect ongoing internal proxy violence and civil unrest in both Pakistan and India, keeping South Asian escalation risks highly elevated.
Navigating these intersecting crises requires a constant, objective synthesis of global data.
And to stay ahead of all of these rapidly developing situations, you really need the right tools. That is why this deep dive is powered by Stylo News.
Stylo News is available as both a mobile and computer application.
You can download it and completely customize it to generate your own personal intelligence-style briefs. It pulls from hundreds of traditional news sources as well as real-time sentiment from X.
If you want to understand the world like a global decision maker, subscribe to Stylo News to get AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com.
All right, taking the anchor tie off for a second, thank you so much for listening to this deep dive. We really hope Walking through the mechanics of these events helped clarify a very complex global picture.
It is always a privilege to map out these global dynamics.
We love digging into these topics, so please reach out and request subjects you want us to cover in future deep dives. And don't forget to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
Definitely.
Before we go, we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We talked at length today about China integrating civilian roll-on, roll-off cargo ferries into their amphibious military planning.
And we see FPV racing drones becoming primary weapons of war.
A dual-use dilemma, right? So here's the question for you to mull over. As civilian assets, everything from global shipping fleets to everyday consumer technology becomes so deeply and seamlessly integrated into state military strategies. Does the traditional legal line between peacetime commerce and wartime mobilization even exist anymore? A critical question for the modern era. Think about it. Until next time, stay curious.